Hello and welcome to our online worship in this time of pandemic. My name is Alex Bradley and I'm a Unitarian minister living and working in Cheshire, and I serve a liberal Christian congregation called Brook Street Chapel in Knutsford. And we hope that when this time of pandemic is over, that some of you may be able to visit us in our ancient and beautiful chapel. The theme of our worship today is To the Rescue. And I begin with words from two sources. Firstly, from the founder of the Religious Society of Friends, the Quakers, George Fox, who wrote, "I saw that there was an ocean of darkness and death, but an infinite ocean of light and love, which flowed over the ocean of darkness." And from William James, who wrote, "We are like islands in the sea, separate on the surface, but connected in the deep." And a prayer. God of compassion and strength, in our times of difficulty, we turn to you, the source and essence of all that is. In calm waters we may sometimes forget you, yet in times of tempest we often call on you. May we remember your faithfulness to us at all times of our lives. Inspire us to become an anchor for those who feel themselves adrift in life's sea. May we be as a safe harbour for friends and others who may be strangers to us, that they might find safety and security in our company and in our beloved spiritual community. And may all people find their place in your ark of loving kindness, acceptance, and peace. Amen. And our first reading is taken from the Bible, from the Gospel of Mark. On that day, when evening had come, Jesus said to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great storm of wind arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care if we perish?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you no faith?" And our second reading is an adaptation of an ancient Sufi story. One day, all the fishes met in a great council to decide on the question about the source of life. They all knew and agreed that it was water, but could not agree on what was meant by that, and so they argued for a long time, now with this philosophical opinion, now with another. What is water? What does it consist of? Where did it come from? Does it even really exist? Then finally a fish spoke, whom all the other fish had ignored up to that point, for he was regarded by many of them as being unimportant and thus not worthy of a hearing. He cleared his throat and said, "I am the humblest and most ignorant of all fish. But please listen to what I have to say, and if you agree, I trust it will end our quarrelling. In a far part of the ocean there is an ancient fish who is wiser than any of us. However, his wisdom does not come from any book or special philosophy, but only from the innermost parts of himself. Let us go to him, as the individual drops of water go to the stream, and perhaps he will give us the answer to our question." All the fish thought this a very good idea, and so they swam many leagues for a long time till they reached the Ancient One. One fish then spoke for them all. O wisest one, we have been told that water is the source of all that is, that nothing can exist without it, and yet we have travelled so many miles, night and day, for so long a time, and still we have seen no evidence for its existence. Help us to understand what is meant by this strange thing, for we find it hard to believe in it. The ancient fish was silent, and then he said, Dear friends, let me ask you, if you were able to bring me even one small thing that was not water, then perhaps I could reveal to you the source of all that is. But you cannot. The endless ocean in which you swim is itself the very source and essence of all that is, and nothing else can or does exist beside it. The fish broke into delighted rejoicing. They realized that water was all around them and in them and between them. All our voyaging, all our travels have been an inner voyage and a journey of the soul. God is around us and in us, and all exists in him. They had found the secret of the water. From an ancient Sufi story. The sea can be a beautiful and awe-inspiring sight. The sight and sound of the waves while sitting on a bench, perhaps overlooking a beautiful bay or cove, can be one of the greatest of life's joys. Certainly, I always enjoy walking along coastal paths, often enjoying breathtaking scenery. The charm of the sea is summed up well for me in the words of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. My soul is full of longing for the secret of the sea, and the heart of the great ocean sends a thrilling pulse through me. But the sea can also be a terrifying force that threatens life and limb alike. The ancient story of Noah's flood reminds us of the power and perils of the sea. Noah's Ark was a rescue mission, so to speak, and it is interesting that it is a precursor of our present worry about the extinction of species. It is not only Noah's family that is saved, but the animals who, as the old song put it, went in 2 by 2. It is a story from long ago which has a distant echo in a present-day charity, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. That was founded by a man called Sir William Hillary, who lived on the Isle of Man. Hillary was a man who had gone through personal difficulties himself. He had been wealthy, but fled from England to the Isle of Man when he went bankrupt. Bankrupts could be incarcerated in prisons for months, even years in those times. He was, however, a man who cared passionately about the well-being of others. According to the RNLI's website, he was all too aware of the dozens of shipwrecks on the Manx coast, and he personally helped to save many lives, working alongside other local people. Amazingly, there were around 1,800 shipwrecks a year in Britain, and no, you have not misheard, that was around 1,800 shipwrecks in a year. So, in February of 1823, Hillary published a pamphlet in which he made an appeal for a trained lifeboat service. He sent it to the Navy, the government, and other important figures. He described the kind of force he envisaged in these words. They were to be, he wrote, a large body of men in constant readiness to risk their own lives for the preservation of those whom they have never known or seen, perhaps of another nation, merely because they are fellow creatures in extreme peril. Those words speak of a high ideal, being prepared to put one's own life at risk for complete strangers of any nation simply because they are in danger. However, almost unbelievably, his appeal was rejected by the Admiralty, the government department for the Royal Navy. Hillary was determined not to give up, and he secured prominent backers for his proposal. And so a meeting was held in March 1824 in the London Tavern in Bishopsgate in the City of London, attended by, among others, William Wilberforce, the famous abolitionist. And the charity which became known as the RNLI was founded. The king himself offered his patronage, and so it gained the word royal in its title. The first president of the society was the then Prime Minister. In view of the fact that people from the very top echelons of society were prepared to lend their names to the project, it seems almost unbelievable that it met with rejection at first. However, this reminds us that progress is not inevitable. Good things must come from hard work, determination, and sometimes self-sacrifice. It took a man with determination and a vision of what might be, in this case William Hillary, to bring the project to fruition. Where there is no vision, the people perish, says the famous text from the book of Proverbs in the Bible. Hillary had that vision and brought it to fruition. The story of the stilling of the storm in the New Testament illustrates the fear that we face when a storm seems out of control. Life is out of control, and all the usual comforts we put around us to reassure us that everything is stable and will last for as long as we wish it no longer have any force. I think that perhaps the calm that Jesus brought about was in the hearts and minds of his followers on the boat. They doubted his love for them. Do you not care, teacher, if we perish? The storm was real, but the tempest was just as real in their minds as well as outside them. Our world has faced the terrible storm of the pandemic in the last year, and now it continues into this one. The storm is real. The pain and distress and loss suffered by so many is real. But what is also real is the dedication, self-sacrifice and service offered by so many people to their fellow human beings during this ongoing crisis. We too can bid the storm be still, not in the outer world, but in our own hearts and minds, and when we can do so, we can help others to still the storm in their own hearts. And we need not be alone when we seek to accomplish this stillness and calming of the tempest. In the Christian tradition, the spiritual community, usually referred to as the church, has often been compared to Noah's Ark, a boat that saves, a lifeboat. This has, unfortunately, sometimes been interpreted in an exclusivist sense, but our spiritual community, our spiritual boat or ark, can be one that takes on all who cry out to be saved. Like William Hillary's lifeboats, our spiritual community can be here to help people who are struggling in the storms of life, or perhaps in calmer times than these, people who feel becalmed, people who feel they are lost and adrift in the great ocean of life. The ancient sailors feared being becalmed with no wind to work their sails, almost as much as any storm, however great. Noah's Ark took in creatures of all kinds, and so we too, in our Unitarian and Free Christian communities, can play our part and open our doors to all kinds of people who might turn to us. Like Hilary's lifeboats, we may help people we do not know, of all nations and all backgrounds. We can remember the words of Jesus, "Be still," and apply them to ourselves so that we in our turn can turn to help others in their own storms and tempests. Peace, be still. Finally, we may take heart from the words of the Quaker George Fox, whose words began our worship. There is indeed an ocean of darkness and death, but the infinite ocean of light and love flows over it. May we come to know in the depths of our being that we are part of that infinite ocean of light and love. And in that knowledge, may we find the tempest gone from our minds and our hearts stilled and at peace. And now a blessing to conclude our online devotions. As we turn from this worship online to our service in the outer world, as we move from this spiritual harbour of security and safety into the open ocean of our daily life, may we find comfort, strength and assurance in the knowledge that you, the living water of life, the God who is in all and surrounds all and exists in all, are in us to still our souls and bring us peace. Amen.